problem we had was like this. Again, the same thing. We're going to want to look into factoring. So the first thing I do is I set my y equal to 0. And now I notice here, though, I can't factor anything out. So what I told you guys to do was to think of this as a quadratic where you know how to factor it. So if I look at this as x squared, OK, x squared plus 10x plus 16, can I factor that as knowing the numbers that I know using? Can I factor it as x squared plus 10x plus 16? Well, let's see. That would be what two numbers multiply to give you positive 16, add to give you 10? 8 and 2. So therefore, that would be x plus 8 times x plus 2. However, ladies and gentlemen, x times x doesn't give you x to the fourth. That gives you x squared. So therefore, this would have to be x to what power? X squared. Because this is the same thing. 8 times 2 still gives you 16. But now, OK, but now x squared times x squared gives you x to the fourth. And x squared times 8 plus x squared times 2 gives you 10x squared. Now we do the same thing. We set them equal to 0. So you'd say x squared plus 8 equals 0, and x squared plus 2 equals 0. OK? Everybody follow me to here? Now we need to solve, though. This one's a little bit more difficult. It's not as easy as over here where you're just solving linear equations. Now you subtract 8, subtract 2. So we have x squared equals negative 8, and x squared equals negative 2. Now, how do we undo the squaring of a variable? You take the square root. Now, what else do we know about taking the square root of a negative number? You can't take the square root of a negative number, but do we know what the square root of one of the negative numbers, maybe a negative like 1? Square root of negative 1 equals I. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to break this up into the square root of 4 times 2 times negative 1. Do you guys agree with this, to me, that this all equals negative 8? And then here, x equals the square root of 2 times negative 1. Now, the reason why I broke up 8 into 4 times 2 is because we can take the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. And don't forget, it's plus or minus whenever you introduce the square root. So it's plus or minus 2, square root of 2, and the square root of negative 1 is I. Over here, we can't take the square root of 2, but we can take the square root of negative 1 and represent it as I. So x equals plus or minus the square root of 2i. OK?